Heather Broughton will be joining us. She's a partner in Agri-Food Management Excellence, an instructor in the CTEAM, Canadian Total Excellence in Agricultural Management. She and her husband operate a third-generation family grain farm in central Alberta. Operating as a business manager, she has strong interest in farm business management and leadership skills, which led her to complete the CTEAM as well as the TPAP program from Texas A&M. She served as the chair for Agricultural Food Council of Alberta 4 years, and looks like she's got things queued up. Let's welcome Heather.
Well, thank you, Norm, and good morning, everybody. I wish I was there with you in Illinois, but given I'm in central Alberta and we are thick in the middle of harvest, so I look forward to this. And I want to say I really appreciated hearing Todd's presentation. We here in Canada are about 30 years behind, and this is a conversation that we'll be initiating with stakeholders in Canada about looking at a standardized financial statement format based on a lot of the work that the Farm Financial Standards Council has done in the US. So I really appreciate hearing that, and have some things that I can talk about that go back to that as well. So just to give you a little bit of information about Agri-Food Management Excellence, we are a company with our vision is to enable people and organizations to aspire and achieve, with a focus on developing people to be excellent managers. So whether you're the CEO or whether you're one of those managers of those cost centers that Todd mentioned, but it's giving those people those management and the leadership skills to take those roles. The company is owned by myself and my business partner, Dr. Larry Martin, who's in Guelph, Ontario, as well as we have a great set of instructors that are both from industry and academia, as well as a great staff to support us. I'll talk a little bit more about the programs that we have that's listed there towards the end of this, but I really kind of wanted to focus on CTEAM and some of the concepts that we teach that actually really have made significant changes to people's management here in Canada and their competence levels and their outcomes. So as Norm said, I think he covered everything for me. We, on a grain farm, we grow hard red spring wheat, malt barley, feed barley, edible peas, and canola, typically. I have participated on boards, working on my mediation designation. As he mentioned, I am a graduate of both CTEAM and TPAP. CTEAM I actually took twice. I initially took it in 2004, and because I'm the CFO of the company, it made sense that I would take this. But when you start bringing ideas home about change, you get a deer in the headlight look. So my husband and I actually both took it again, and with a much better input and plan coming out of it with both of us as decision makers. And that's something that we really advocate, that when people are taking any programs like CTEAM or TPAP, that if you and your partners can all participate, it's an excellent opportunity. I'm a mother of 3. I have 3 adult kids and a grandmother of 3, with that population doubling in the next few months. So life is busy. I'll talk a little bit about Larry Martin. Larry's actually originally from Ohio, where he had taken his degrees as well as his PhD at the University of Illinois. They moved up to the University of Guelph, where he was the chair of the Ag and Economics and Business Department. From 1990 to 2012, he developed or created the George Morse Center, and it was part of the University of Guelph as it first started, and then it became its own identity. And it was a research think tank. And the management programs actually originated from the George Morse Center. And when Larry stepped down as CEO in 2007, I began working with him on the programs, and we had the opportunity to take them out of the center in 2012. And so we became an independent company, Agri-Food Management Excellence, where Larry is the lead instructor. He is a recipient of a number of awards. I picked the two that mean a lot to him, the Wilson Laurie Award for Excellence in Farm Business Management, as well as he was inducted into the Canadian Agriculture Hall of Fame in 2018. Also father and grandfather of two, and he's an avid fisherman. So lots of experience and knowledge comes from Larry through the programs. So a little bit to introduce CTEAM. It stands for Canadian Total Excellence in Agriculture Management. It is a national management program for farmers. So we have farmers who participate from across Canada with growing from seed potatoes to blueberries in the east to grains, dairies, feedlots, hogs, poultry, dairy, horticulture. So we kind of get a vast array of farmers, whether they're even agritourism, depending on what they're doing. We also have had people from Sweden participate a couple of years ago, which actually led to a program similar to CTEAM being developed in Sweden through the university there, which was awesome to see. The program itself, it's carried on through 4 modules. 2 modules now are virtual, and 2 modules are face-to-face to try and better accommodate people's schedules. The face-to-face modules are held in Calgary and 1 in Guelph. And the purpose of actually having people step away from their farm, it's similar to TPAP, gives you that opportunity to step back and work on your farm without being distracted with the day-to-day operations. So these modules take place over 2 winters. And each module is actually, we start on Monday morning and we end on Friday afternoon. So they're quite intensive, usually going into the evening as well. And so with this program, the difference with this program, being I've taken both programs and I love them both excellent management programs when I'm referring to TPAP and CTEAM, just a little bit different in terms of with CTEAM, it's a small group of 22 to 25 people in the program at one time, and they're actually focusing on their farm. And as they go through and progress through the program, you're actually building what your plan is. And you're also working with your own financial data, about 3 to 5 years, to actually use as an analysis for your internal. And it helps because finance and strategy are so integrated. It becomes part of developing your plans and contributing to your decision making. So it's really a more focused piece where you're actually working on your farm, opposed to learning the big concepts with the larger groups. So with each module, we have a set of tours, and with the virtual program or the virtual modules, we set those tours up virtually. And then face-to-face, we give them the opportunity, we spend the day and we're out and about going to businesses, agri-food businesses or agriculture businesses that support the concepts that we're teaching in that module. And so after that tour, virtual or in person, we always sit down and we do a download on what the takeaways were, because the wonderful thing about the people who are doing the tours for us is they're very open about sharing their strategy, any successes and challenges that they have, their human resource strategies or management. And so we were able to sit and talk about this after and how it incorporates into the things that they're learning. So it's a great opportunity to see business successful implement the things that we're talking about. We refer CTEAM to kind of as a mini MBA program, simply because of the type of the management topics that we talk about. And these are all things that we're familiar with, the pillars of management. So they include the strategy, the planning, finance, HR, risk management, succession. And with succession, we actually talk about the hard structures, so the structures and the agreements, as well as the soft issues, and talking about some of the family dynamics, the communication piece. So we really try and encompass that. And performance management, and a big one is understanding and responding to that external environment and things changing around us. So as I said, this program really is geared to prepare you to taking a leadership role in your family business or in your business as the CEO or the general manager So learning opportunities comes from different points. You have the opportunity, obviously, you learn from the instructors that we have, delivering the content through the presentations, learning from the tours, and a large part of the learning comes from each other. There's a huge amount of sharing. This becomes a natural peer group as it forms through the 4 modules. And there's a lot of things shared and learned in the hospitality suite after the formal day is done. And that network continues on after the program. And you also learn from what you're doing with your own plan and putting pen to paper, as well as the coaching that you receive from myself and Larry as you go through the program. So what are the learning objectives? Really, it's to develop that strategy and understand what that strategy is for your business and putting together that strategic plan. Knowing how to implement that plan into your management processes and how it all fits together. Understanding the integration of finance and planning and putting them all together, because your finance is going to dictate what strategies you're able to do and or what you're able to not do or what you're not able to do. And then obviously, as you're looking through your financial analysis, how do you improve your financial performance with financial management? And then understanding the fundamentals of HR and how that's incorporated into your management processes as well. So it's really a comprehensive program that covers lots of different pieces, but a big piece we really focus on is the strategy and the finance piece. And that's probably what I want to talk a little bit more about today, to kind of give you some insight into terms of how this tie together. And that's kind of the shining point of the or a large portion of the CTEAM program. And these are just a few. We touch on the succession and estate, developing your marketing skills. We do a bit on using futures and options, whether you, if you're in commodities as a buyer or a seller. And what is leadership in your business and how to develop those leadership qualities to be a more effective leader in your business as well as in industry. And then the last piece that we actually touch in the last module of the program is understanding what the impact of public policy is on your business and your industry. So how do those trade agreements affect us? I know we're looking at the last Canadian, US, Mexican agreement. And so how do those impact producers in Canada and the US and Mexico? So it's really understanding the importance of public policy in your industry. So let's talk a little bit about strategy and really what is it? We base the work that we do and how we teach the concept based on the works of Michael Porter. And he comes from Harvard. Joan Magretta wrote a book and it's called Understanding Michael Porter. And in that book, the definition of strategy is that set of integrated choices that define how you will achieve superior performance in the face of competition. So just to understand what strategy is not, it's not the goal. It's not what we're, wanting to achieve overall. And it's not the actions. One of the things we really try to make clear to people is making sure they understand the difference between what is the action and what is that strategy. And so here I've used the examples of building a new barn, renting more land, hiring more people, buying equipment. Those are really actions. And what are the strategies that those actions are supporting? And so when we talk about decision-making later on, it's really putting the thought and understanding instead of simply making the random actions, but understanding what is the strategy is that supporting to help facilitate that decision-making process. And so the strategy is obviously the reasons why you want to build, rent, or hire. So it's how one positions the organization to achieve your goals. You want to achieve the value proposition or deliver on the value proposition. And what are those actions to achieve the positioning? So to paraphrase, really it's organizing what we'll call the internal value chain. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go on, and what the value proposition. but it's really trying to organize that internal value chain to deliver on that value proposition to your target customers in order to earn the profitability and the higher profits than the industry average. And so really we can look at two different types of strategy: adding value to increase revenue or reducing cost, or three if you want to combine the first two. So in AME's world, when we're working with strategy, we want people to be concise. We don't put together a plan that's pages and pages and pages, but we really just want to identify, what are we trying to accomplish? How are we going to do it? Who's responsible for what, when, how did we do? And all this put together, when we use it, you can use it to guide your key performance indicators, guides the work, and it provides the guts of the staff meeting, because you can actually use this document to sit down, understand in the actions or the sub-actions what was completed, why wasn't it completed, and if it failed, what do we need to do differently? So the document in itself becomes an excellent tool for business management purposes in a number of different ways. So this is kind of just pictures how we go through the process. And so we start with the external environment, taking a look at how did the markets and customers, the policies and the laws and the regulations, technology, socioeconomic factors, and even the suppliers that we have or the competitors, and really starts getting us to think about those and how they impact our business, either negatively, but also what are the opportunities that we see when we start looking at all those things. And as we start looking at what the opportunities can be, that's where we can start defining what our value proposition is. And a value proposition really is about what you're going to produce or what you're going to do, who are your customers, and what is that relative price. And sometimes for a grain farmer, that feels like it's, you have to overthinking. And sometimes it's really, I want to be a low-cost producer producing grains and oil seeds for international export, achieving premium prices. So you can, some can be more complicated than that, but it can be as simple as that as well. And so as we define our value proposition, we also take a look at what is the vision of our company? Where is it that we want to be in 10 years? I think, sometimes we had a vision that was out there further, but lots of things change. And so we kind of take a look at that 10 to 15 years and say, what is our vision for our company? And we do have an exercise that kind of helps people kind of put that together, because sometimes it seems overwhelming and trying to figure out what is it, where do we want to be in that 10 to 15 years. We also take a look at core values. We spend actually quite a bit more time on this, simply because core values really contribute to your how you manage, what you're going to do and what you're not going to do in your business. It impacts your culture. Core values is super important. I had an opportunity when I took a group to Germany in 2019, and we went through the Lemken factory where they build cultivators. And this is a multi-generational company, and the most recent generation was there to do a presentation for us. And she said, what the employees know is the core values. They can recite the core values. It's the core values that drive that business. And so I took that, brought that back. And so we've actually spent a lot more work in understanding what the culture dynamics are based on your core values. So from those things you put together your value proposition, then you start thinking about your strategic intents. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you define what those strategic intents. But from there, you come and you are able to develop what your operating plan is and the implementation, which includes your actions, accountabilities, timelines, the resources that are required, as well as the measures. And the measures are a really key piece. You want to have a measurable on there to know if it was achieved or not achieved, and what you need to then assess to do differently. And so all this, again, can be used in your feedback and in your management systems. So whether it's through your meetings and your supervision, or working with your employees through coaching, incentives, and rewards. So there's always a ton of decisions to be making in farm management. And this is where we're tying together the decision-making, the strategy, and the finance. There's several types of decisions that one makes through the course of the year. And what is the relationship to the strategy? So let's talk about within that fiscal year. Do we apply fungicide or not? It's not going to change your strategy. But between years, and it's consistent, you can be deciding, am I going to be planting one crop over another, more acres of one crop over another? Then there's the longer term strategy and bigger investments. And how does this play into my strategy? Am I going to build that shop or do an expansion? So what does that look like? So there's another example, say a change in strategy. Perhaps you are in livestock and you're going to close that feedlot down and pursue something else, or continue with just your grain operation, or investing in a value-added activity in the farm. I'd like to use this one as a major change in the external environment this year, and I apologize, I have my canola prices in there simply because I'm not as familiar with your soybean and corn prices currently. But last year, the last number of years, canolas probably ranged in that $11 per bushel. And this year we have seen as high as 22 bushels per acre. And so what does one do with those profits? Do we buy that new combine? Given we have some excess cash that we could do that, it would reduce taxes. Or should we be using those profits to build working capital or pay down debt? So same in reverse. If I actually bought that combine or 3 combines and then my crop gets hailed out, what do I need to be considering in my strategies? Do I need to be pivoting and develop a new strategy? And then there's also the ability and the need to judge what that success of that strategy. And again, that comes back down to the measurables. But are we doing as well as we expected in the operations and finance? And so again, one of the big things that we, as I talked about earlier, is we really want to understand if that action supports your strategy. So I use the example of if there's land coming up down the road from you, if there's farm for sale, and we always say as farmers, it's always nice to have that land that's close to you that you can buy. But if your strategy is to be reducing debt, does that purchasing that land fit into that strategy? And how does it impact the financial performance and capacity? So this is how we kind of tie it all together and understand how the decision-making that we do every day is tied to your strategy and your finance. And so to do each of these or consider each of these, there's different information analytical tools. And so we really want to start with what are those clear, measurable strategic intents? And then we bring in the use of budgets, whether it's your whole farm budget, your enterprise budget, your partial budgets, or a capital budgets. And then the importance of comparing your actual compared to budget, and understanding and using the operating and financial ratios. Many is what Todd had indicated in his presentation. One of the things that we have found is, I think everybody knows that a lot of these budgets that exist, and when I refer to a capital budget and understanding the time value of money, but understanding what the financials in that purchase and how it impacts your financial statements. Not only is the purchase itself, is it a good purchase? Not saying that equipment is always going to give you a net present value, positive net present value. But in some of the expansions, and you're looking at doing a capital budget. So it's looking at what that capital budget is, as well as the impact on your financial statements. So this is just kind of an introduction to support that, how strongly aligned strategy and finance need to be. And so understanding your financial performance is a key factor in when you're looking at that internal analysis. And so when we start thinking about the internal analysis, we want to be thinking about people, so our HR, our human capital that we have on our farms and businesses, the assets that we have, the cash, the land, the equipment, the processes that are happening within the farm business. Whether you're a large farm business with different cost centers or a smaller horticulture business. And then as well, the finance piece. So when we talk about the finance piece, let's use this example about this farm that decides that it wants to develop on its value proposition with the intent to integrate downstream into direct marketing. So direct marketing of value added product. So if it is going to take HR, it's going to have implications on your marketing, your HR, and may have other for functions like logistics and technology. So if we're looking at this farm and we look at the financial analysis, and it has an operating efficiency of 20%, a current ratio of 0.9, so not even reaching, not significant cash to cover current liabilities, there's a deficit, as well as the funded debt over EBITDA is 8-1. So when we take a look at the financial position of this company and looking at the strategic intent that they are wanting to do to actually start direct marketing a value-added product, we would actually have them really start to stop and think about what is the impact, and do you have the financial performance and capacity to actually take this on? And in this case, it's one that they should probably not take on. So it just really is an example of how integrated finance and your strategy need to be. So how do we measure what that performance is? We start with the budgets and the actuals. Here in Canada, it was interesting as I was listening to Todd, our structure here as sole proprietors or partnerships, you file your income taxes on a cash basis. And so when you receive your income statement, it's on a cash basis. So there's no accrual adjustments given from your accountant unless you actually ask for them. And the incorporated companies here, we receive all our financial statements in accrual. So we already have those adjustments made. And so with farms, we are using accrual numbers when we are doing the budgets and using the comparison for the budgets to actuals. So this is where the conversation where we start talking about the standardized income statement and how we've organized it. And it's interesting, before I go into telling you what our statement actually looks like, this is a conversation, as I mentioned, that we will be having in October with stakeholders across Canada to actually start discussing about some of the work that the Farm Financial Statement Council has done and how can we do something similar in Canada. What we really noticed on financial statements with the farms that we've worked with over the years is the inconsistency of the format. And we've had a number of come through, and these are incorporated accrual statements, but the format as we see them, there's absolutely no ability to get any management information out of these to make decisions. And so we had actually engaged in a project with BDO, who is a large accounting firm up here. And we did a 3-year project with them. And so we put together the statement format that you will see coming up. And through the project, they were able to use their producers' data and using our format, we ended up coming up with some benchmarks. And so that is one format that's available. MNP, which is another large accounting firm up here, also has a format which also gives management information. It just differs a little bit from the BDO format. I tend to use both because I have both available and have that ability to use the analysis. But we really find that it's important, and this is why we're wanting to have that same discussion as what's happened in the US about having that standardized format and the benchmarks available for the stakeholders. So that being us as farmers, the users, the lenders, the accountants, if they're advisors, and industry. And so we're hoping that this will kind of grasp. And as I've been told that, it's important to, check the egos and the lapel pins at the door, but we can get everybody to work together for the best interest of the industry. And so as I go on, what we have done in our financial statement is segregated the operations from the capital piece. So we're going to look, obviously, we've got combining is an operating decision. How we structure our assets, whether we own, lease, rent, or share, is a capital decision, and we want to assess the performance of both of those. So this is basically the format that we will use. And so we've got the revenue, only your farm sales, any government assistance or support payments come down in the other income and expenses. So it's only really revenue that's generated from the farm business. Cost of goods sold, so the inputs that go into the products produced with your gross margin. Then we have the direct operating expenses, including your fuel, your repairs, ending up with your contribution margin, less your operating overheads, so your admin, office, all the overheads that apply to all the cost centers over the operation, resulting in your EBITDA, so your earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. Less our financing costs, and so this is where we have separated the capital costs out, whether it's leasing or rental or purchase, and then below we take out the interest, and then we get EBT from your farming, and then below we will add in the other income and expenses that are not directly related to the farm income or production expenses, resulting in your net income before tax. So this is the one that BDO is using with their clients currently, and this is what we are basing our financial analysis for in our CTEAM program. So just to kind of go quickly over, as Todd said, there's a number of different ratios. We focus on the operating, liquidity, the solvency, and the profitability. Again, you can see different definitions. And this is, again, one of those reasons that we would like to see some standardization across the board, so the definitions are the same. We tend to look at trends over the past 3 to 6 years when we're looking at benchmarks. I also agree you can look at benchmarks provided, and we use the benchmarks in our spreadsheet. But I also agree that you have to be really aware of who you're benchmarking against, as well as I think it's a really strong tool to be benchmarking against yourself to track your own trends. I think that can tell you your progress as good as anything. But the benchmarks really can be used to actually try and help you identify where some of the problems may be in your financial performance. So just a quick summary on the integration of the strategy and the finance. Finance is really a part of your internal analysis and how that plays into your plan. It's important to calculate your farm's ratios and understand what those ratios are. What do those ratios tell you in terms of your operations and your performance? Your solvency and capital ratios will tell you about your financial position. And are there things that you can do to improve performance? And are they strategic? And what are those strategies that are needed? Your financial position can also tell you about your costs and effectiveness of your financing. So overall, there's a ton of information that you can derive out of these financial statements that you can use to drive your strategy and help you with your decision making. And this is a key focus of what we do in the CTEAM program. Again, this just talks about how we use the financial analysis to diagnose problems. So again, we're using the benchmarks, knowing what your targets are, and then understanding what your financial health is. So again, in times of significant profit or loss, and I mentioned this year when I talk about significant profits or losses, in early spring when the crops were going in, the prices were going out, crops looked really good. We found ourselves in a drought position, largely in the prairies, where now the significant profits has now turned to significant losses. And so this is the webinar that we'll be having with our alumni in terms of what are some of those decision-making things that you need to be considering. And this is exactly what we're going to be talking about. Should you borrow more, pay down debt, build working capital, pivot, change your strategy? And again, one of the last things you can do when you're looking, well, not one of the last things, but one of the things that it could tell you is when you're looking at some of these, your ratios and looking at your financial statements, you can look at it and kind of easily identify how did you get into trouble. And sometimes it's as simple as diverting from your strategy. If you have a machinery strategy where you are purchasing, equipment that's 3 to 5 years old, minimizing your amortization, but you change your strategy because you had a really good opportunity to buy that new combine. And perhaps as you look now at your financial statements, was that the correct choice? So this is just an example. When I refer to the strategic intents, this is just an example that I pulled off a sample plan that we have. And this particular one, it's addressing some finance. It's the working capital, increasing production while decreasing inputs, cost relative. So looking at the production processes and what needs to be refined, and because these also, again, impact your finance. Looking at the equipment strategy, and then looking at their marketing strategy and how they're going to, what actions they're going to take to improve their marketing strategy and lower their risk. So from each of these, the next steps then would be to determine the actions under what each of those strategic intents are, identify who is responsible, when the due date is, the measurable, and then the process that needs a review that needs to be done. And this is something that we really try and make sure that people think about. Sometimes we just move on to the next thing and try something different without understanding why it didn't work in the first place. And then lastly, we really want, we have our participants focus on what the risk management plan is and assessing what the risks are and how to put that plan together. So some of the feedback that we've received on our program is it's an extraordinary experience. It's a life and a business changing course. And I think any opportunity for professional development is awesome. I think for this particular program, they say this because of the focus that they gain by sitting down and putting together that written plan. A number of farmers I know, and we were guilty of it before I participated in CTEAM, is it was all up here. And we talked about it, but we never actually put it pen to paper. And as we put pen to paper, and this is why I guess I ended up becoming so involved in the program, but by seeing the benefit of it and understanding that that plan is going to be an evolving plan over the years. It's the coaching that they receive from us and the instructors. And again, that feedback that they're getting from the peers and that peer group that continues on. And that plan is a valuable plan to use as a basis for the decision making. So just to quickly touch on the additional programs that we have through Agri-Food Management Excellence, launching in 2022 is a program I've put together, and it's Empowering Lasting Leadership Excellence, short form L. This is a program for women in agri-food and agribusiness, agriculture. Women take on a number of different roles, and this program is really based on supporting them in the roles that they're in, whether they are in an ownership role, a partner such as myself, or the other group we will call is the unsung heroes, where they're providing support in the family business, but don't necessarily have that role. And so it's looking at two themes, one being a leadership theme and one being a management theme with a hybrid delivery model. So I'm excited to get this launched, lots of education opportunities, as well as networking ability for women across Canada. And, I'm quite familiar with Annie's project. And I will say, I think that is one of the things that inspired me to do this, because it's a great outreach for the women in the US. And so when I looked at what's lacking in Canada, I thought this was a great opportunity to put something together for the women in ag here. We also do price risk management using futures and options. This is a virtual program that we do in February each year. And really it's basic understanding, going all the way to understanding technical analysis and the fundamentals. So chart analysis. Managing machinery investments decisions. This is one where we actually focus more on understanding the impacts of those capital decisions. So we have some templates to help producers make those decisions and understanding again, what are those impacts on my financial performance as I make them. We have an advanced CTEAM program, which we offer for people to come back if they want to bring their family back. A lot of the participants now have their adult children who've come back to the farm. And so they will join us with the advanced CTEAM program. AME alumni is a little bit more low key and a little bit more casual and fun. So it's not as in-depth, more presenter and just an ability to network with the alumni. And I also do the international agri tours. And so I've had we've been in Brazil, California, Germany, actually in the European countries. And now looking at taking another tour back to California, hopefully in February, if COVID allows us. So that concludes my presentation on AME and the focus of our programs and the themes that we hope to achieve through all our programs. And I just want to say a big thank you again to Norm, and thank you to all of you.
Well, thank you, Heather. Do we have any questions? It's a remarkable set of programs. It's how long did it take you to get everything up and running? And second question, what's the waiting list look like?
To get everything up and running, well, CTEAM, because it was an existing program, when Larry and I took it over, we started making a few changes and have made a few changes along the way. And one of the biggest changes probably going to the 2 virtual models or modules. So that one is pretty easy. The L program has certainly taken some time because there's a lot of moving parts on it. And it's a regional delivery, which I also was able to borrow from, I believe it was somebody in Washington through one of the women's programs. And she was really willing to share this delivery model with me. But it has taken some time to do it. And this is one where the women, because attending programs like CTEAM or TPAP, or we have a leadership program up here in Canada, or even the leadership programs through IAPL in the States, it's not easy for women to actually participate and get away for those lengths of time with family obligations, business obligations, and work. So we're trying to do the regional delivery with the virtual presentation, similar to what you're doing here. So that one's taking a little bit of organization, but I think the outcomes will be exciting.
For your benchmark reports, do people send in an itemized set of financial statements and someone consolidates that into the correct format, or are farms providing guidance to create that format and send in summarized reports? What are the mechanics of that benchmarking systems you were talking about?
Okay, so good question. So we have a template that we use that's based on, so the financial statement format is in there. We include the balance sheet, income statement, statement of cash flow, and then the ratios. And so we will sit down as part of the program and help people enter their data into the spreadsheet, because you want to really make sure that that data has been entered accurately. And as I said, some of the formats that we actually see come through the program, people aren't always as adept as getting the information or sorting through it. So we will help them and make sure it gets put in there correctly so that the ratios are reflecting correctly.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much, Heather. Very interesting, and we wish you well and want to keep in touch. So let's give her a round of appreciation. Thank you. Thank you.